Marie was in our group. Marie she had some good points, so.
Oh,
Go ahead.
well, we like to have this image that you could be rescued, and it may be false in a way, but walk across that ocean on dry land, that we could be lifted out of a terrible situation. And sometimes we feel that that has happened, like, you know, something you're really worried about doesn't happen, or something you're really worried about comes through okay. And you feel like, so that image about the water and being pulled out of something is something that is often used, and we all have had little times of rescue. And then also I said, I forget something else.
But I think I liked your comment about how this image is so used so much in literature. You know, that many of the images of Exodus are, well, we know about movies. Movies love this.
So do politicians. I sent you a link to an article a few weeks back about how the Exodus imagery is often co-opted by some by different groups.
Is there something significant about the number 40? Because we talk about 40 days and 40 nights numerous times through the Bible.
Yeah, we do. It just is code for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, if you come back and do Revelations with me, we'll go through a lot of the numerology.
Okay.
No, not really.
Not deep. We aren't going deep conspiracy thinking because it's not true, but there's some in there.
The other thing our group said was that this is a recurring problem. We never can get out of this war.
Yeah.
And not just, I think it can be expanded to not just Judaism, but to all the conflicts. We never seem to get out of wanting to, and indeed succeeding temporarily in conquering somebody else.
Mhm.
Our group said the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that we mentioned was that the God that's in Exodus is very much a God of power. It's not a spiritual God, a resource like we think of God now. And I think a lot of the ideas that we think of came in with Christianity, because that was maybe seeing that this whole thing of power is not the answer.
So I want to be really, really careful because this really is the foundational scripture for the Jewish people.
Mm-hmm.
This is upon which, you kind of can think about this class as an ecumenical interreligious dialogue where we're learning what another religion deeply values. This is the scripture that deeply values. So if nothing else that you take away from it, know that you've heard study the foundational story for another religion, right? One that is deeply treasured. And I think when you say that, Marilee, you're putting on your Christian lenses. I think it could be very, very also true that a Jewish individual would come from the basis of this story and see this as a deeply spiritual story, and see this not as a God of power, but as a deeply spiritual story of God accompanying through everything, through trial, through challenge, through everything. So I just want to be real cautious about how we think about this story and how we phrase it from an interreligious standpoint. And so often, I think we have our Christian lenses on, and I hope that you take from this some of the ways in which those Christian lenses have done pure destruction and harm through the centuries as well. So it is a foundational and critical story to the Jewish people, and it's a story of rescue. Kind of what Marie talked about. So Shirley, do you want to say something before I show you what's up next?
Well, yeah, I wanted to say that I've been around many Jewish people in my life, and now it may be that this is a little different because none of them were what you would call religious Jews. And so they have great respect for their heritage. But they're not going to believe some of those things that we read any more than I do. But it's their heritage, just as I think it's my heritage. It's just farther back. But there's a real split among various Jewish orientations, and of the people I've mainly been around, and as I said, many Jewish friends, none of them were practicing Jews, and so that may be some difference. And it's not that they disrespect their heritage. In fact, some of them may still do a Seder, but they don't do other things because they see it as history, just as mainly I see the Bible as history, not as some rigid belief system.
Yeah, and I'll say I'm a little uncomfortable as Christians talking about what Jews believe without Jews at the table, right? So that's like that's like talking about my minority friends without my minority friends at the table. There's a richness and a diversity of spirituality within Judaism, from mystics to devout, conservatives to Orthodox, an incredible diversity of beliefs and understandings within Judaism. So,
well, I don't think that's a problem here. I don't think you have anybody in this group that doesn't understand that basic.
I don't. The one thing I really think it's critical with Exodus is to recognize that this is a story that we just have to hold with honor and respect for the Jewish people. That this is a foundational story within Judaism. So, and it is deeply spiritual. So go ahead, Paul.
So this is probably way too big a question for this time in our lesson, but so I see this is very much all about the Jewish people and they're being God's chosen people. And I don't see any opening up to take care of other people at all. There's no inclusiveness. Am I missing it? Or
no, I think it's true. It's true with all the things that you encounter in the Bible. It was written for a specific set of people at a specific time, right? And it is held with different sensibilities by the Jews than it is by Christians, than it is by Muslims, right? All three faith traditions honor these stories. So, so you hear this, you're God's chosen people, right? And that is a message that resonates for Jews. But I think with all sacred scripture, and I'm going to go very broad with sacred scripture, whether it be Hebrew scripture or Christian scriptures, all include, gathering moss or braiding sweetgrass, like Marilee brings up frequently as sacred scripture. There's a diverse, collection of sacred scripture that's out there. That the whole point of it is to mine truth and meaning for our contemporary times. So I would challenge you to say, okay, where is there in something in here that's calling to me? Like I think what Marie did about that imagery of being rescued and walking in the water. And that's I think the real joy and gift that comes out of studying sacred scripture is to think about, oh, what is that calling me to do or be in the world?
But in the New Testament, Jesus, I realize he's talking to Jews, but they do talk about Gentiles being included, and it's not just the Jewish people, and they make a rather large point of that.
Yeah, and we're going to really wrestle with that in Matthew. That's going to be a big issue in Matthew. So, yeah.
It wasn't an easy decision, was it?
What, Marilee?
It wasn't an easy transition.
No, it's really painful, and it comes out in the Gospel of Matthew in some really awful ways that are going to be, lived out throughout the centuries in some really heartbreaking ways.
I guess that's the saddest part I take from Exodus is that they're reenacting the whole thing right now again. They've occupied a country, and because they're the chosen people to live there. And now they're destroying the people that live there.
Yeah, and now you know the foundational text between this and Genesis, which is justifying the Israeli government's actions.
Is Netanyahu a fundamentalist? That's my impression.
The cynics, I think, would say Netanyahu is an opportunist.
Yes, yes.
He's a
But his
politician.
backers are probably fundamentalists.
Yes, it's a
It's
very,
very
very
literally.
hard right government.
But also that solution in the Mideast was worked out by a lot of so-called Christian nations.
It was.
Right.
And we're going to deal with that for anybody who wants to show up for the book of Revelations, which is, how those Christian interpretations of the coming back of Jesus play into geopolitical policy decisions. So, Marie, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
The other thing that is important in dealing with mental health or dealing with people who are inclined to join a gang or in some other way be self-destructive is it's important to believe that you are special and chosen. We have to believe this stuff.
Yeah.
In our the way we're made up, it's important to think that I am an important person and there's something good about me. And it may not be exactly spoken there in Exodus as an individual thing, but it's a thought that we have to use in our culture.
And remember when these stories were written down, they were enslaved in Babylon. Right. So to Marie's point, there's a lot of validity there. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. I know we're over, but I just want to show you what's next. So book of Matthew is going to start December 6th. So we'll have a couple weeks off in November. We're going to go, like I do with most of the New Testament books, we're going to start with a deep dive into Matthew himself, who he is, why he wrote it, who he wrote it for, some of the key themes we're going to encounter. So it'll be the intro to Matthew. And then in December, we'll cover kind of the Matthew birth and child narratives. And then that will take us all the way up until mid-February and Lent begins. It's early Lent this year, so mid-February Lent comes. And then in Lent, we're going to do a 4-part series on the Marys, 2 on Mary, Mother of Jesus, who she was in Scripture and who she is in tradition. And then on Mary Magdalene, who she was in Scripture and who she is in tradition. So that's a 4-part class. And then in April, starting on April 16th, we're going to go through the book of Revelations. So that's what I got planned for y'all in the coming months. Okay.
Okay.
I just want to say I really
You don't like to
appreciate
plan
doing
ahead,
this
do
with
you?
y'all. I do like to plan ahead. You know what? It comes from years of having curveballs thrown at my head. And I know that, well, if I've got it planned ahead and the curveball comes, it's okay. I can move on. So
Good
Yeah.
idea.
I really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for doing this book with me. I know it was a challenging one, but I think it's a really important one, especially now. It's a really timely one. So thank you, everybody. I'll let you go.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Take
everybody.
care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.